You know, sometimes when the world feels like it's completely chaotic and about to fall off the wheels, you hear people say things like, "Man, I feel like I'm in the episode of The Twilight Zone." Let's talk about it. Do you recognize this man? What about now? This is Rod Serling, the creator of the brilliant show, The Twilight Zone. Now, friends, Rod Serling didn't just make a TV show, okay? He made a masterpiece. 30-minute episodes in black and white while he was basically airing humanity's dirty laundry. He touched on everything: racism, sexism, xenophobia, government interference, the lack of government. Anything you can possibly think of, he thought of when he made an episode. So let's take a quick look at some of my favorite episodes of The Twilight Zone. Start off strong with this episode, which first aired in 1961, called The Obsolete Man. So let me paint a picture. A librarian, yes, a librarian, is put on trial by the government for being obsolete. Why? Because books, ideas, and thinking for yourself are dangerous in this new world order. Does this sound familiar? Book bans, curriculum censorship, teachers getting labeled as radical for teaching history. Sterling wasn't writing fiction. He was just looking 60 years into the future. Next up, we have The Shelter. This also aired in 1961. It's a classic. Power goes out, people hear there's a nuke coming, and suddenly this quiet suburban street turns into survival of the fittest, HOA edition. One guy has a bomb shelter, and his neighbors, the same people who came to his barbecue last week, are now breaking down his door to save themselves. Borders, refugees, who's allowed in and who's left out. Kind of sounds familiar, right? This is just an immigration policy at a block party level. People love to preach love thy neighbor until those sirens go off, honey. Let me tell you something. If there is one single episode that I highly, highly recommend, it's this episode. This is called Time Enough at Last. It first aired in 1959. So basically what happens is a man just wants a little peace and quiet so he can finally read. He only dreams of respite. He just wants one uninterrupted moment to himself. Then boom, nuclear war happens. Everyone's gone. He finally has time alone with all the books he could ever want. And then guess what happens? His glasses break. Isn't that the most terrible thing? It's like earth-shattering. So this episode isn't about bad luck. It's actually about burnout, right? This man spent his whole life hustling, squeezing in joy between work shifts, and when he finally gets a break, it's too late. Does that sound familiar? We're all out here waiting for later to rest, banking on someday to relax, but sometimes later never comes. Respite is a human right. You shouldn't have to survive an apocalypse just to get it. Rest is not a luxury, it's necessary. And no, you shouldn't have to fight for it with your employer or your family or even your own guilt. The amazing thing about history, especially shows like this, is that we can look back and see what happened. And what has happened is that it keeps happening. So it really does feel like we're in the Twilight Zone, because why does the same thing keep happening over and over again? So I want to know, which episodes still haunt you? Are you stuck in the Twilight Zone? Are you living on a Maple Street with your paranoid neighbors? Drop it in the comments, because I want to know which one I should go spiral about at 3 a.m. And I'll just be here pondering about the Twilight Zone.